Exactly. Good. Right. Subcenter.
Might be slightly different in terms of contentiousness.
Yeah.
Basically, the report asks you to consider disposal of the council's freehold interest in the town centre complex. The property has been subject to some marketing, and basically an offer or a negotiated sum of £400,000 has been generated in terms of the potential outcome. If I just start with a bit of background, there's obviously a plan attached to the report which shows the location of the property in Pallister Ward. The property currently comprises a purpose-built office, business, function training and meeting room complex. Site area is 2.31 acres. As at present, the property has been fundamentally vacated by occupiers. There are two businesses remaining currently. One is a local nursery provider that has a lease in place and can remain at least until 2019. And then in addition to that, there is a catering operator who run the commercial kitchen on a licence basis, and they're on a rolling 12-month basis. Council's intention in disposal is that the interests of both of these occupiers will be protected. The preferred bidder would end up taking them on as tenants, and their businesses would hopefully be left undisturbed until at least the termination of their current agreements. The council basically declared the property surplus. It's been marketed quite widely and for longer than we normally would do to make sure that we've got proper coverage. It's been done by way of a two-stage process. Stage one was an information gathering process that sought to generate some information with regard to bidders. And stage two, in theory, would have been to take any of those returns that came back that were of interest. That stage two would have basically dealt with the financial element of the bidding. We received 5 returns in response to stage one. There was a mix of different uses, including residential, nursery, and commercial business purposes. CMT considered the stage one returns and basically issued instructions to proceed with the only party proposing a business use, which basically is in line with A, what's happening down at the moment, and B, basically is the preferred use for the council for the future. In response to that instruction, we basically entered into private treaty negotiation with the preferred bidder, and basically concluded on a figure of £400,000. In terms of impact assessment in relation to that, there is no direct adverse impact, although because one of the existing businesses is a nursery provider, we basically looked into the occupier remaining, and there being no impact as a result of the change in ownership. In terms of implications generally, the complex is held on the council's asset register at a far higher figure of 1.5 million. This figure represents how much it would be to rebuild the complex, so it isn't such a valuation in terms of what is market value. The complex was valued earlier in 2014 by an independent surveying house, who actually generated a figure of £600,000. We've linked the figure of 400 to the 600 based on the amount of money that would be needed to spend on the building. Because even for the council to carry on running the building and operating it as a business and commercial centre, significant investment had to go in terms of in relation to health and safety, public access, and actually making the actual space suitable. So the valuation can be sort of tied down and justified on the basis of that. In terms of the process, there was a challenge of some sort from the nursery in response to them being told that they weren't successful. That's been run through myself, the head of asset management, the director of commercial and corporate services, and also the chief executive. Legal services have looked at the matter and given advice, and basically concluded that the council is not at any risk in terms of going forward in terms of challenge. In terms of the building, it has a history that's related to some element of grant funding in its creation. through City Challenge and also through European Union monies. We've looked into the effect of actually disposing of the building, and because 20 years have passed, there's no issue in terms of the funding that was received in grants. In terms of consideration by officers other than sort of working in my team and the regeneration teams, some consideration at CMT was given to just seeking to protect the council's interest further if the building got demolished, and also in terms of further development of the site. So there will be legal clauses put in to protect A, the demolition of the building, and B, the potential for further development in the rear that the council at this stage wouldn't sort of see any benefit from. But if it was to happen, we will seek protection there. The property is situated in Palestine, and respective members have been consulted on the potential to dispose. So basically we're looking to seek approval to proceed. So I don't know if there are any questions in terms of my battling through.
What were the nurseries probably then? I mean, we don't detail, just...
Yeah, the nursery, I think there's two issues. A is their future, because obviously their lease only runs for another 4.5 years, something like that. I think my feeling in terms of negotiation with the preferred bidder is that he will want to keep them in as an income stream, so that will be positive for him. And also the nursery does have terrific trade there. There's a lot of cars and prams coming in, so it's sort of, I think there's an issue in terms of their ongoing business model, but also I think they were desperate to have the opportunity to take the building on, but it didn't quite fit in with the council's sort of preferred vision, I suppose. So we sort of run that through, but their occupation isn't threatened in any way. We don't want them to make the decision to leave. We like them to stay and their business be unaffected by all of this.
I had a number of discussions with the guy who runs the nursery. I think it's fair to say that their submission was confused in that they were trying to make it into everything. So it was, we'll have a respite centre for children's services on the second floor and a business centre on the first floor, and it kind of just didn't stack up. It was kind of, they were trying to fill the building with lots of different things. The kind of discussion was, well, what background have you got in running a business centre then? Well, none, but you can take a chance on us. And kind of said, well, we wouldn't. And that was pretty much...
And the answer is, well, the preferred bidder, I'm sure if they had those ideas of developing something like that, I'm sure that, you know, if it was me in the position of the person that's been preferred, I think I'd be looking at talking to them to develop those things as a potential sort of ongoing business.
Is the nursery a thriving nursery? I don't know about it.
Yes. Sorry, I'm answering for you there.
Yeah,
it gets a very good deal,
yeah.
and I think that's part of it as well as, you know, I think undoubtedly when we got to 2019, if the council still had ownership of the site, we'd be looking for an increase in rent, and they know that, so they're kind of saying, well, actually, you know, if the council hasn't done it, it's probably more likely we'll be facing a rent increase in 2019, and the answer to that is keep them moving no matter what. But I mean, it's really well established.
Yeah, you said this was the only bid which met the council's requirements in terms of commercial development. Were there any other bids for any other sorts of development?
Yeah, basically we had bids from residential type users wanting to either refurbish the building or knock the building down and build a housing estate. So we had those sort of bids.
Right, we can pursue those.
I think that in terms of, I think the council had the opportunity to pursue whatever it wanted, because the stage one returns when they came back were designed to sort of set out a proposal for the council to consider. And I think that the preferred, you know, if you did a list of preferred uses, number one would have been commercial purposes, in terms of generating business and income and, you know, everything else that happens along with it.
Would any of the others have generated a bigger price?
You can't sort of definitively answer that question in terms of saying no. However, one of the bidders, despite not being asked for a figure at this stage, did provide a figure, and that's actually less than this by about £40,000. So I think that provides an indication.
I've got to say, I mean, you can't buy a decent detached house in Nunthorpe for this sort of money. I mean, it's ludicrously small compared to, well, I know it's emotional, but it's emotional figure that you've got. You know, it just...
I think, yeah.
I also, sorry, just say, I also, I mean, I know you can justify it because you offset the costs of this. We've been through this before elsewhere, haven't we? And, you know, you go from 30 million to 600,000. We've gone from 1.5 to, you know, and I mean, I know that technically I'm not challenging you know, the sort of professional, but politically it's going to be seen as giving us away for peanuts. And if we're talking about further and politically contentious things, I mean, I think this is a bit of a time bomb, you know, compared to Albert Terrace, which is now in there.
I think in terms of valuation, I think yes, you've got valid sort of reasoning there. I guess that you would have to look at this in sort of respect to what's around it. So if you looked at properties around Berwick Hills, properties sort of Priestfields type area, and look at the values there, they're obviously vastly different to the likes of somewhere like Nunthorpe, and the sort of factoring is slightly different. But yes, I mean, without doubt, it's on the council's asset register. What is a it's referred to as a depreciated cost valuation, which is basically if it blew up tomorrow and we had to rebuild it, it would cost £1.5 million. So that is without, you can't hide that, or you wouldn't want to. It is fact.
I think there's another issue as well in that for 400,000 the developer doesn't get a ready-made business centre. They're going to have to put significant investment into the building. So it's not going to cost them 400,000 for a business centre.
We estimated that we'd have to stick in at least 300. I mean, if they're going to take this to where they're telling me they are, then they're going to be looking to put at least £500,000, £600,000, £700,000, and that then takes it to a different, level.
That's a worry there.
Well, yeah, that's.
I mean, I don't want to hold this. I am nervous. I just think that whatever the professional justification, it can be seen by. There's a sensitive time, it can be seen as giving this away for next time.
If you reverse the word about it and say, this building, let's assume some money's been spent on it, what's its rental value? Because that's why somebody will buy it, obviously.
Well, currently at the moment,
does 400,000 still stack up as a reasonable figure?
I think it will do, because currently it's under occupied. And I think it's generating around £54,000–55,000 per annum in terms of its rental. So if you sort of link that back and factor it by sort of 10, it'll take it back in terms of the value in terms of the disposal. So
and that's a gross rate.
That's a gross rate, yeah.
There's only 2 people there.
There's only 2 people
there.
So
the rest of it is
yeah, I'm thinking, you say 200,000, you rent out, 3 times as much.
It loses money at the moment as a rental property. Yeah, the running cost of what's coming in, right? It would lose money.
The thing is, especially the council as well, obviously previous to the occupiers being vacated, there were the likes of the Shore Start Centre, and there were council teams in terms of had offices in there. So not everybody that was in there previously was income producing, and they were occupying, pretty much the lion's share of the building. So.
I think the issue you're highlighting, might be something I've alluded to in discussions we've had in the past, which is where you've actually got a real mismatch between the value that we're holding on the balance sheet and the actual valuation of the property. So we've got something that in reality has been valued at 600,000 and sitting on the balance sheet as 1.5 million, because that's what it would cost to rebuild it. Well, we're never going to get 1.5 million for it, that's just a fact.
You were going to say something.
No, it starts the reality of life, if you like. We're never going to rebuild the flat centre. If we did, that's the basic valuation. It's a formal valuation process for the accounts.
It isn't accepted.
It isn't a market value valuation. It's an accountancy.
It's not real. Why is it on the?
Because that's the way the process has to do with the accounts.
The new process for managing our land and property assets that you approved this week will help rectify that, because what we'll hold on the balance sheet.
It's completely bargain having a totally fake figure.
Yeah. And we've been criticised for at least the last 4 years by our external auditors for that. And that's why the new way that we'll manage property assets means the valuation that we hold will be based on the intended use. For example, if you value it as a housing site, it's always going to be worth more than if you value it as a business centre site. So we need to correct the valuation.
Although in this case, if you were going to build housing on it, you'd have to demolish the town centre, which would cost a
Yes.
as well. So that would offset against whatever.
I mean, a really big house.
Yeah.
And just go back to Mike's first point about the two stages of this process, which I think actually is the rationale. But it does seem odd to some extent to say, right, there's a site, we'll open it up for offers or interest in it, and then after that we'll decide what we want to continue there. And I know we've done that, on a number of occasions, and it's perfectly legitimate in some ways. But is that a sensible way of doing it?
I think in terms of this building, can I just answer this? I think in terms of this building, there are so many potential different uses in the area. I think what I think that the sort of the instructions came, or the reason why the instructions came to me in that manner was that it's almost like finding out what's out there that we may not have thought about, or and we could have had 15 responses in, maybe, but we had 5. They were what we were, and I suppose that they came back residential, nursery, and business.
And I suppose it's quite useful to justify this.
And I think it's almost like one of those things that if you're standing in a bus queue and you've got a choice of 5 buses, which buses would you get on? The one that takes you to the nearest to your house. And in this case, I suppose that the favoured use was that commercial, sort of potential proposal. And somebody might have come for something completely different. I'm just trying to think about something completely off the wall that we've not thought about. Like some sort of leisure use or something.
I think what's missing at the moment, and what we're hoping to have in the future, is what we should be looking at is how do these proposed usages fit in with the regeneration plan for that particular area? What's our regeneration plan for that area of Middlesbrough, and do these proposals fit in or not? The feeling from the regeneration department was that we wouldn't want housing on that site, so therefore the housing proposals were off the table, which left us with 2, one of which was a whole mishmash of ideas, and one which was in keeping, but there isn't a kind of regeneration plan you can hold on. It's actually to look at the footprint and see if it fits in. That's kind of where we're going.
If we weren't going to entertain housing, why did we invite people?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't think we were closed on anything in stage 1 of the process, because it was just complete information gathering, wasn't it, in terms of just getting what people are prepared to think about using it for. So it wasn't that we went out and saw a particular use at minute 1.
We had a discussion about another site this week, kind of where we've been in negotiation for a long time, years, and it's something that can be fairly easily resolved. We either just want the maximum receipt that we can get, and we're not bothered about the usage, or we want to be really clear about the usage, and that might limit the capital receipt, and we need to determine that before we get into doing the deal. And in this instance, that wasn't there. So
I mean, it's fair enough to have, that's what we want, but why did we say that at the beginning instead of saying that? So, and the other, press the public on here, I won't press this anymore, but this, I think you understand, this could be seen as contentious by 2 days before further. Do we really want to go ahead with it now, or delay it until 6 weeks' time? Would there be any problem in doing this?
Personally, I don't want to talk out of turn, but I don't think so.
No,
I come across what you really want me to say there. I don't know.
No, I want you to say what you think.
I think it's one of those.
The purchaser will not be happy, but we can get over it.
That's well.
That's fine.
So, how do we
I think someone who might not be happy at the very end of it, though.
Yeah.
Phone on voicemail.
I'm just asking the question.
If
other members think we should go ahead.
From a purely property point of view, I don't think the preferred bidder would walk away if you knew how to wait. So I think from my side of the table, I think you have to make the correct decision.
That's what I think. You're only talking about a matter of weeks, aren't you?
Yeah, the simple
question that might be put is a million and a half versus whatever it's worth, as Mike said, and I accept the answers that have been given, but they're not simple, are they? They're not the one get one line, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. So that's where I was going. So why are we making the decision to put it down?
I'm not sure that
In a more public sense.
in a professional sense, I'm not sure that there's a reason. I mean, I accept the logic of that. But, I mean, it's we know who the proposed buyer is. He's sort of well known publicly. There are people who commented on the difference between notional costs and actual costs. Whether that could be seen as something that would give some people an opportunity to criticise the council. I mean, that's very political. It's a political view, it's not a professional view. And if we're here to accept professional advice, I mean, I'm not trying to give professional advice. I think that's. But as you say, I mean, whether you can actually write down as a reason, probably is a bit too political. Maybe we better not do it.
If you're wanting a reason that you can publish, then the reason would be that the committee wanted more explanation of the variation between the selling price and the value that the asset is held with in the balance sheet. That would be, you'd want a further report explaining that. Because whilst we've discussed it today, you haven't got it in writing. So that would be your reason for deferring it. If you want to defer it and you want a reason you can kind of put out there. Yeah. So, yeah. So, is that what we're doing? Yeah. So right, if we do that, what happens then?
Well, in terms of the valuation, I think I can set out in a lot more detail sort of the linkages between the various figures and reasons why, and if that needs to be sort of bundled back up together and put back to you, then that's fair enough.
So effectively, nothing becomes public about this report or that. Haven't got anywhere that yes or no or whatever.
You want more further information in relation to the service.
Yeah. That's the way forward. Fine.